Hi everyone and welcome to Moonstone Makes. My name is Tommi. You can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as DynamiteTrujillo. Welcome to episode 115. Thank you so much for being here. Today is a gloomy and overcast and a little bit rainy Friday in March here on the Northern California coast where I'm coming to you from. You can find show notes for this episode in the description box below. That's where you'll find links to everything I talk about in this week's episode. If you are a new viewer, welcome. Thank you for being here. And if you are a returning viewer, a big welcome back. This week we still have our two make-alongs running, both of which are coming to a close somewhat. The first one is the Finish It, Fix It, or Frog It make-along. And that is running through until the end of April. So it's not really coming to a close. You still have 2 months. But that is a make-along where you can go through your old whips, your unfinished objects, decide if you want to finish them and then finish them, or rip them out, reuse the yarn for something else, or go through your FOs that you may not be wearing or using, or they may not be working to their full potential, and fixing them, ripping them back and fixing them, or just completely frogging them, and again, doing something else with the yarn. I have been doing a lot of that one in particular. Since the start of this make-along, I have ripped out a few, either 2 or 3 completely finished sweaters, and gone on to reuse the yarn for different sweaters. So that's been really exciting. And that make-along is running on Instagram and on Ravelry. There are links to the Ravelry threads below, and the Instagram hashtag is hashtag FinFixFrogMal, and that's right here. And I keep saying that wrong on the podcast, so I apologize for that. But it is FinFixFrogMal. That is the correct one. And there are a lot of great things happening there. I feel really great that people are feeling inspired to finish things or rip things out. I think both options are wonderful, and I'm really happy to see people doing it. So the next make-along that we have going is the Seasons Make-Along 2021, and that's a year-long make-along, but it's split into the 4 seasons. So this season, which is winter in the Northern Hemisphere and summer in the Southern Hemisphere, is coming to an end on March 20th. So before the next episode of Moonstone Makes, it will have ended, which means I'm going to draw for prizes at the next episode. So that one is where you can make anything inspired by whatever season you are in. So right now we're doing the winter/summer edition, and that is on Instagram as Seasons MAL 2021, and there are also Ravelry threads for chatter and FOs, so you can participate in any of those ways. And right before I record my next episode, I'll draw for prizes for this season, and that pretty much means that I always kind of extend the deadline to enter FOs or whatever until when I record. So if the thread is unlocked, you can still post your finished objects for prizes, and you can just keep posting on Instagram forever, and I'll choose from there as well. So I do have a couple of prizes for these make-alongs that I showed you last week, and I will be donating some more from my shop, which is Moonstone Dyeworks. And as always, if you're interested in donating any prizes to any of these make-alongs, feel free to get in touch. So I'm excited about that. Thank you to everybody who's been participating in these make-alongs. It's been really great and really fun, and I have so many more make-alongs I want to do. I have lots of ideas. Anyway, let's move on into what I have been making these past couple weeks. I have lots of FOs. In fact, I noticed that every single thing that was a whip in my last episode is a finished object in this episode. I don't think that's ever happened before, and it's pretty exciting, so let's get into it. So the first finished object that I have is a hat, and this is the I need I need help with this because this is in French and I don't know French. But it's the Bois-de-Coulonge Hat by Jean-Philippe Cliche. So I knit this hat using Moonstone Dyeworks, which is my hand-dyed yarn, in 2 different bases in 1 single colorway. The colorway is Winter Mute, and it's a tonal navy blue, and it has a really subtle like mint speckles and kind of cranberry speckles, but they're very sparse and very subtle. And the 2 bases that I used are the Merino Sock, which is a fingering weight merino nylon blend, and the mohair silk lace weight base, which is a mohair silk lace weight. And the pattern calls for you to use a fingering weight yarn and a mohair silk lace weight yarn, both held doubled. So you have 4 strands of yarn going, 2 of which are fingering weight, 2 of which are lace weight. And it calls for 1 skein of each base. So this is what I have left over. And what I did when I was making this is I just caked up each single skein, and then I pulled from the outside and the inside of the cake the whole time that I was using it. So that's what I have left. I haven't weighed it, but it's probably a good somewhere between 10 and 20 grams left over of each. So it didn't take that much yarn, 2 skeins or less. And here it is. So it's pretty much an all over 1x1 rib hat. It's really long because it's meant to be cuffed up. So this is the whole length of the thing. And it's got this really cool slip stitch detail. And it's got it on the front and the back. And it was really great. It was really fun and quick to knit. The slip stitches are slip stitches and cables combined, but they're the really simple, easy cables that are just like 1 stitch crossed over the next stitch. So I didn't use a cable needle, and I am somebody who typically does use a cable needle because I always forget how to cable without a cable needle. But I did not need one for this. It's pretty easy to cable without a cable needle when it's just 1 stitch over 1 stitch. And I'm very happy with this hat. So here is what it looks like on. It's very thick and very warm because it is that 4 strands of yarn held together. Essentially, it equals like a worsted-ish weight gauge. And it was knit on a size 7, I believe, but I could be wrong about that. I think it was a 7, I think. And yeah, it's got the slip stitch up here, or you can put it on the side if you're feeling frisky. And it's really nice and thick around the ears. I'm very, very happy with it. Now it has been washed and blocked, so it's all nice and pretty. But since I have put it on, I am going to wash it and block it again, just for safeties. But this is going to be a prize giveaway. So I am going to give this hat away, plus the remaining yarn, which I'm going to reskein and wash, to a Patreon winner. So if you don't already know, I do have a Patreon, which is linked below. Anybody who contributes any amount for any length of time, every quarter gets entered into a quarterly drawing where I give away something typically that I've made, or it could be yarn or something like that. And this quarter, which I'm going to be drawing for before the next episode, is the prize is this hat and this yarn. So if you're interested in winning this hat, go check that out. You can also contribute via Ko-Fi, and that will get you entered into the drawing as well. So I definitely recommend this hat. It was really, like I said, fun to make and quick, even though it was all over 1x1 ribbing, which, you know, typically kind of isn't considered the most fun thing to knit in the world. It was really nice. The slip stitches, the cables were really fun to do. And like I said, it just went by really fast because it was a bigger gauge and bigger needles. And it's just super, super thick and warm and cozy, and I love it. If you've watched the podcast for quite a while, you may know that I have like a thing with yarns that have flyaways like mohair. when I'm knitting with them. The kind of the halo hairs typically, you know, they fly in my face, and it's something that typically really bothers me. It didn't really this time though. I think I might just be getting used to it because I've been slowly working more and more with yarns like this, and I think I'm getting to be okay with it. So that's kind of good because I really like working with this kind of yarn and with other yarns too. It's not just like the silk mohair lace weight that does that. Lots of yarns do it, and I think I'm getting better about it, hopefully. So that's my hat, my Bois-de-Coulonge hat by Jean-Philippe Clich, and I love it. My next finished object is a pullover that I knit for my daughter Lucy. This is the Eliza Sweater, and it's a pattern by Maria Monska from the Stitched in Sweden podcast. And I really, really like how this came out. This was also a really, really fun make. This one is all over brioche, and it was made out of 4 different yarns. So the pattern calls for either a fingering weight held double the whole time or a DK weight yarn. And I did fingering weight held double in 4 different yarns, and I'm both marled and striped them. So you'll see these different stripes, and there's 4 different yarns in here. So the darkest one is Handmade in Fine Yarn Casbah Silk Fine in the Dark Before Dawn colorway. The next lightest one, which is kind of the dominant shade in this stripe, is Malabrigo Sock in the Rayon Vert colorway. And then there is a next lighter color that's kind of between these two. It's held in both of these stripes, and that is Junebug Fibers Swanky Sock in the Amethyst Hour colorway. And then the lightest color, which was a really light pink, was Madeline Tosh Mo Light in the High and Low colorway, I believe. And that's a single ply merino mohair blend. And so none of the sweater has any of the yarn just by itself. It's all marled together the whole way, and I really like how it turned out. 2 of the skeins were full skeins, and 2 of them were just partial leftover skeins. And I used most of it, but not all of it. I do have some leftovers, but much of those leftovers was used in the next project that I'm going to show you, so I don't actually have the leftovers to show you. But this sweater is really great. I made the second size, which I think might be the 2 to 3 year size, or maybe the 1 to 2 year size. I can't remember. Lucy, my daughter, is 2.5, but I went with the chest measurement, and it is still even pretty big on her, so she's definitely going to have time to grow into it. But brioche is pretty forgiving and pretty stretchy. It is really long on her. The sleeves are pretty perfect. The neck band is definitely really wide. I do wish the neckband was a little snugger. And I did hear Maria talk about designing the neckband in her podcast when she was designing the sweater. And she originally did design it to be a little closer to the neck, but her testers found that it was a little too tight. So she expanded the neckline to be a little looser. I personally kind of wish it was a little more snug, but because it is pretty kind of gaping on Lucy, and it like comes down pretty far. But it's okay. Like I said, it is a little big anyway, so she's going to grow into it. So it'll probably be more fine as she gets bigger. And it's got a drop sleeve shoulder construction, which I love just in general. I really like. And yeah, you pretty much work top down. There's some really great shaping up at the top to shape this back shoulder section, which I really like how this seam is in the back top shoulder. And you work your way down, and then the bottom is just a 1x1 ribbing. You pick up for the sleeves and just do some regular sleeve decreases until you get to the end. And then the cuff itself, again, is 1x1 ribbing. And it's amazing. I love it so much. I'm really glad I made this for her. As soon as I saw this design in progress, I knew I wanted to make it, and I think I cast it on the day it was released. So I definitely recommend this, especially if you really like brioche knitting. I love knitting brioche, even though I don't do it that often. I really enjoy it, and it's really simple, even if it's something you've never done before. Maria explains it really well in her pattern, but there are also a ton of really great tutorials on YouTube about knitting brioche. Among the best, in my opinion, are from the Unapologetic Knitter, which I'll link to below if you ever have trouble with brioche. I think her tutorials are kind of awesome. So she's got tutorials for the regular brioche stitches, but also increases, decreases, and like a bunch of other techniques. So yeah, I love this sweater. Lucy's been wearing it a lot. She's actually worn it a few times since I finished and blocked it, so it's not even quite pristine right now. But I'm super happy with it. And it was a long time coming, me making Lucy another sweater, because it's just been too long since I've made her something like this. So yeah, that is the Eliza Sweater by Maria Monska. She named it after another podcaster that I really love, who is Stacy of Stress Knits, who has a daughter named Eliza, who is about Lucy's age. Okay, that is it for that. My next and final finished object, you may know what it is if you watched the last episode. It is my, well, it's kind of a finished object. It's a mofo, which is a mostly finished object. And it is my, what is it called? It's the Stash Dive Scarf by Summer Lee. So it's done. According to the pattern, it's done. But I wanted to add tassels or fringe. I wanted to add fringe, but I haven't done it yet. But here it is. So this is just a straight up scarf. It's a stockinette scarf that you knit in the round. So it is stockinette on both sides, and then it's open in the middle. And it's closed on both ends. And it calls for Kitchener stitch to close up the final end, and like a sewing inside out method to close up the first cast on edge. But what I did is when I cast it on, instead of the regular cast on that she calls for, it's a free pattern by the way, is I did a provisional cast on and then picked up and did a Kitchener. Whereas what you're supposed to do is just do a regular long tail cast on, turn it inside out, sew it shut, and then turn it back right side out. Now, a commenter on one of my previous videos said that maybe next time it would be a good idea to do a Judy's Magic Cast On, which is like infinitely brilliant, and I wish I would have done that. And if I ever make this again, I'm definitely doing that. So that was a really great idea. But I did Kitchener both ends shut. And I did leave this tail. This is just a really long tail from my final Kitchener because I had to use a different yarn just because it was my provisional cast on edge. I left this because I was intending on putting fringe on anyway. I just still haven't done it. So the pattern, like I said, it's a free pattern by Summer Lee. It calls for using worsted weight scraps held together with fingering weight scraps. And you hold 2 different yarns together for every stripe. And then you do 2 new yarns for every new stripe. And so that's what I did. I've got a lot of different yarn in here. I tend to collect a lot of fingering weight and worsted weight scraps. So it was really perfect. I used up a lot of scrap yarn. And I also used some DK and some sport weight and just kind of combined things as the gauges worked, you know, like I put a sport weight with a DK and a worsted weight with a fingering. I also have some lace in here. It's got a lot of non-superwash, superwash, woolen spun, and worsted spun yarn in here. I really like that stripe. This is my very favorite stripe. This is the Malabrigo sock, I think. Yeah, this is the Malabrigo sock from my Eliza Sweater, held with some Fiberco, I think, right? Yeah, held with Fiberco, like, it's like a linen wool blend, and one of them is held double because the linen wool blend is like a lace weight. So that every once in a while I would do a stripe like this where I had like 2 fingering weight yarns where I would hold 1 double and 1 single, so I'd have 3 strands fingering, which also worked really great. So that's pretty much everything. It is very scrappy. I wouldn't say there's an overall color theme, but there are lots of pinks and browns and blacks and grays in here. Now, I've just been lazy about the fringe. There's not really any other good reason that I haven't done it yet. I did try once to do fringe, and I got 1 fringe in and I was like, nah. So what I did is I just cut a length of yarn that was about that long. And I decided it was too short. So I'm gonna go through again and make longer fringe because this is pretty much gonna be like that if I do it how it is. And I think I want like longer fringe. So I definitely did the fringe too short, and it's also a little bit annoying because the way that I'm going to do it is with the crochet hook, and I'll kind of poke the crochet hook through the scarf fabric and pull it through, and then essentially do like a little, you know, little knot thing with the fringe itself like that. Sorry, I'm not trying. Picked the wrong finger to do this on. But anyway, it's going to be kind of like that. So to be able to do that in a really solid fabric like this, that isn't that loose with no like holes put in it, it's a little annoying and it's going to be a little tight. So I could have thought that through a little better. I don't know what I would have done. Maybe added some eyelets. I could also do like an extra crochet edge with some like picots where I could put the fringe in. So I'm just not sure yet, and I haven't really wanted to think about it. But it's overall really pretty done. And it's nice and long. I did the 6 feet like the pattern calls for. So that's kind of the deal. Pretty traditional little scarf. And I'm super, super happy with it. I talked about this before when I first started this scarf, but I really am starting to like Summer Lee's designs. I really like her aesthetic, her color sense, and she designs mostly sock patterns, so I really wanted to cast on a sock pattern of hers pretty soon, so that might be coming up in my near future. We'll see. So that is it for my FOs. I was very surprised with myself and very happy that I finished those things since last time. And now I have almost a clean slate to start over with. Of course, I've got all of my UFOs that, if you haven't seen it yet, I did a vlog video where I pulled out all of my unfinished objects. I'll link to it up here. And I showed you the things that I could work on for my own make-along. So I would love to go through some of those and kind of pull those back into rotation, but I don't know if I will because there are lots of new things that I want to cast on, including my first whip. So I'll show you that now. Oh, by the way, okay, I'm not done with the scarf yet. So I made a magic cake. I took a bunch of the fingering weight yarns that I had put together for that scarf, and I made a magic cake because I still had a lot left over, a lot of stuff that I didn't use. One of those stripes takes hardly any yarn. So I did a lot of repeat yarns in that scarf, but I also still had just a ton of stuff left that I didn't want to go back in my scrap bin, which are these 2 little bins right here. So I made a magic cake for my granny stripe crochet blanket. And I'm pretty excited about this. So I do have a granny stripe crochet blanket on the hook, and it's a very long-term project. I've been working on it for, I don't really know how long, a very long time though. And I really enjoy 2 different methods of working on that blanket. I really like the method where I kind of am intentional about yarn and color choices, and where I do like two solid rows of a certain yarn before moving on to the next yarn. I think it looks really nice having like even rows of different yarns on that blanket, but I also just really love working from a magic cake and not ever worry about changing yarns or picking the next yarn or, you know, adding in new yarn. So I'm going to do this next on my Crochet Granny Stripe blanket. This is that Fiberco yarn, actually, that I was talking about a few minutes ago. So I haven't done it yet, but I made the cake, and hopefully that'll be one of the projects that I start working on again sometime soon, because I really love working on that blanket. Okay, on to my work in progress now. So this is living in my Fat Squirrel bag. And I've got a lot of stuff going on in here. So this does not just include, hold on, I dropped some yarn. This does not just include knitting, but it's also a spinning segment. So I'm working on my Spark cardigan. It's a pattern by Andrea Mowry, and I'm using these two yarns. So this is some hand spun, and this is Malabrigo Rios, which is their worsted weight plaid yarn in the Chocolate Night colorway. This yarn is some yarn that I frogged from a finished object for this make along. I have this much of it, which I think is about 5 skeins, if I remember correctly, like 5 skeins total. So this is going to be the third sweater this yarn has been made into. The first sweater that I knit with this yarn was way back when, a long time ago. It was one of my very first sweaters. It was the Harvest cardigan by Tin Can Knits, and it wasn't great. I didn't love the pattern and how it fit me, and I just didn't love the sweater. I never wore it. So I eventually ripped it out, and maybe last year I reknit it into a Nurtured pullover by Andrea Mowry, and I loved working on it. It was a great sweater. It was beautiful, but it just didn't fit me in a way that I felt comfortable in, so I frogged it. Probably a few weeks ago I frogged it, got all the yarn. I only had that sweater for like a matter of months before I was like, nah, this isn't working for me. So this is what I'm using for the main color. And for the color work part, so this is a bottom-up open front shawl collar cardigan, and you have your main color and then you have your contrasting color work yarn that she calls for spin cycle, which is kind of a yarn that gradiates in color progression, if that makes sense. You've probably heard of spin cycle, but it's dyed in the wool, and two different, okay, it's hard to explain. It's kind of like hand spun. It's dyed in the wool in like color blocks or segments, and then those two, that wool is plied, that wool is spun and then plied, and so it creates like a hand spun effect pretty much. So instead of using spin cycle, I use some hand spun. I was working on this a couple episodes ago, and this is how it came out. Now this is a combo spin. I used Into the World in the Second Spring colorway and spun right round in the Cornucopia colorway, both of which were pretty autumnal color palettes. I used 2 4-ounce braids, but I did a test spin of it, which is right here. I decided there were certain colors in each braid that I didn't love, and I took them out. So from one of the braids, I took out a lot of the bright yellow, and from the other braid, I took out a lot of the really bright teal, and I came up with this. It came out to be a worsted weight, which is what I was going for. I got 179 grams total, and I got 400 yards. And I'm super, super happy with how this came out. It's really squishy. The fibers are, so the Into the World Second Spring is Cheviot, and this is from a club. And then the spun right round cornucopia is Falkland. And that's her logo. So I love the feel of it. It's very soft and very lofty and beautiful. I spun this on my Ladybug spinning wheel, which is a shocked wheel. And I'm not a terribly consistent spinner, so the way I spin kind of across the board is combination short forward, short backwards draft with a little bit of like wooleny, like long drawiness thrown in there sometimes. So I would say it's like a semi-woolen, semi-worsted spin. And it does feel very airy and lofty in places. I'm very satisfied with it. It's not too like tight anywhere or ropey the way hand spun can be sometimes. And I really love how the colors came out. And let's show you what I have so far on the sweater. So far I have one sleeve. This is it. So this is what the hand spun looks like with the Malabrigo. It has, you work bottom up on this sweater and you work the sleeves first and then the body and then you join them all at the yoke. So she calls for a really long 2x2 ribbed cuff because you're supposed to fold it up when you're wearing it. I'm probably honestly gonna leave it folded down because I really like a long kind of over my fingers cuff. And here's what the color work ended up looking like with the hand spun. I'm super, super happy with it. And this color work is really fun to do. It's so basic and so simple and mindless. It's great. So I've got my points where I've done the sleeve increases with those little progress keepers. And so now I just have the second sleeve to do and the body. And then I'll be done. I'm talking like I'm almost done. I have a sleeve. Here's what the sleeve looks like on. Look at that. Ooh, I love it. So I'm very happy with the colors. I am somebody who typically goes for this kind of color palette. I really like pinks and purples and blacks, but I also really, really love earth tones. I really love browns, especially deep, rich browns like this. I really love autumnal colors like oranges and like dark greens and all of that stuff combined with the whole brown spectrum. I love stuff like that, and I don't typically make stuff in those colors just because my temptation is always to go to black, purple, pink, that kind of stuff. But I really wanted to get back to kind of this kind of color palette. So I'm really happy with how this is coming out. This is a fun pattern to work on so far. And the shape of this cardigan is like exactly my style. I love cardigans like this. I'm hoping to have enough yarn to lengthen it a little bit because I really do love a really long cardigan. I really like it when it just goes kind of right past my butt. That's like my perfect length for open fronted cardigans. And this one, the way it's written is going to be a little shorter than that. So I want to make it a little longer. It's bottom up though, so it's a little hard to tell as I'm doing it if I'm going to have enough yarn to do it. I have slightly more yardage than the pattern calls for, but just slightly. So I'm going to see how it goes as I do it. And hopefully I can get a little bit of extra length out of it. And we'll see. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I'm really enjoying working on it so far. I'm using the recommended needle sizes, which is a 5 and a 7. So far, because I'm working on a sleeve, I am using my Chiaogu short tip, like mini interchangeable set, so that I'm just working completely in the round. And it's been great using these needles. I've really enjoyed them. These needles do come with 2 different lengths of needle tips. So right now I haven't cast on the second sleeve yet, but I'm all ready to go because I've got my ribbing needles on here. So these are the 5s, and these are both the super short tips. But when I switch to the main fabric, I'm gonna go up to a size 7. And for that, I'm gonna use a short tip and a longer tip. So this set comes with both of these lengths. And the reason why I'm doing that is because since I have a little more fabric to work with, I can put in the longer tip and it has enough room for it. There's enough stitches to go over the long tip pretty much. And I found that with the color work, using 2 of the shorter tips was really... Okay, hi. So my camera cut out because my SD card was full, because, by the way, I'm using a brand new camera that I purchased and it records bigger video files, so I need a new SD card that can accommodate bigger files. So I had to stop recording to put the files on my computer, to restart recording on an empty SD card, and in that time, a few things happened. One, I realized that the nice external microphone that I purchased for my new camera was not plugged in. So instead of recording this whole podcast, my first time on my brand new camera, with the nice external microphone that I bought for it, I realized I was just recording with the regular old internal microphone the way I used to with my old camera. So that's awesome. So, by the way, I have a new camera. It's a mirrorless camera. It's like a step up from what I was recording on before. I'm in love with it. If you want to hear more about it, you can check out my last vlog video, which was my March 2021 favorites video. But I tested the video that I've already recorded, and the audio is fine. It's like kind of the old audio from my old video, so it's no different to you, but hopefully with my next video, the audio will be a little better. I don't know, not like that matters that much, but I'm looking at my nice fuzzy microphone right here, just not plugged in. I can see the cord dangling there. I don't know how I didn't notice it before, but anyway. The other thing is that since my SD card was taking so long to empty, because the files are so big, it was taking forever, so I went in and took a basketball break. Played basketball in the backyard with my husband for a little bit. It's still actually saving those files on my computer right now, but after wasting a bunch of time, I realized that I have a second SD card, so I'm recording on that now. Duh. More info than you needed. But the third and most important thing that happened while I was taking that little break is that I cast on for the second sleeve. So here it is. This is the second sleeve on my Spark, and I'm about 2 rows in on my little tiny needles. I put on a Progress Keeper too, just because. This is a woolen forest Progress Keeper. It's a little crow. Crows are my favorite birds. And as I was saying before, the reason why when I go up to the main body, where I will have more room, more stitches, I'm gonna switch from the 2 short tips to the 1 long tip and the 1 short tip, because I found that when I was doing color work with the 2 shorter tips, my left hand started cramping really, really badly. And so I changed it so that my left tip would be a little longer and my right tip was still a super short one, and that totally fixed it. So these short tip needles that are meant for small circumferences in the round are still a little new to me. I got this set at Christmas time a few months ago, so I'm still getting used to them, but for color work, definitely the thing for me is the longer left hand tip and the shorter right hand tip. So that's what I'll be doing as soon as I'm done with this cuff that I have now. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for that sweater. I'm really, really enjoying it. I think it's going to be a really awesome sweater. And I'm also looking forward to all the other sweaters that I'm going to be casting on pretty soon, because I have definitely more in my queue coming up that I really want to make. And that is it. All of that for just like a couple more minutes of recording. So that's everything I finished, which was all my works in progress from last week, and what I'm working on now is just the sweater. I just bound off on some of those other FOs, like yesterday and the day before, so I'm newly and freshly with only one work in progress actively going, which feels really good and kind of weird, so I'm sure that won't last long, but I'm super enjoying this sweater right now. And okay, I will leave you there. I hope you are enjoying the end of winter or summer, wherever you are. And if you're partaking in the make-alongs, I am so grateful to you, and I just love it when people participate in the make-alongs. It makes me very happy. So thank you if you are participating, and you have definitely more time to participate in both if you would like to. So check those out on Instagram or Ravelry. There are links in the show notes below. If you enjoyed the video, please do feel free to like and subscribe. It is always appreciated. And if you're interested in checking out my Patreon, the link is down below. Also, definitely appreciated. And you could also enter to win the Bois-de-Coulonge Hat. So check that out if you're interested. There are also some other like cool things that you can get sent to you in the mail every week if you're interested. Not every week, every month. Every month. So I would love to hear what you're working on. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in a couple weeks. Have fun and stay awesome. Bye.